Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett, along with Kent Meyers, we're here every week, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we're going to kind of delve in on one person, but a couple of subjects.
Two aspects
of
Kirk Mammen's life. He is our guest today and is the head of construction at Flintco in Oklahoma City. And we're going to spend a little bit of time later in the show talking about Flintco, what they do and how they do it and how they've acquired such a stellar reputation in the construction business. But we're also going to talk to Kirk about little sports. He's a four-time national champion heavyweight wrestler at Oklahoma State University. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about that as well.
Should be a good show. It's coming up on The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy, on the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Well, as we talked about at the open, our guest today is Kirk Mammen. He is the area manager and a vice president in Flintco. He is in charge of the Oklahoma City area and the western part of the state. Kirk was at OSU a collegiate wrestler of some note. He was a four-time All-American. I think I said national champion. I correct that. He corrected me on that. He was a four-time All-American at heavyweight at about 275 pounds. So, Mick, watch what you say.
Yeah, don't worry.
No. In fact, it occurred to me that if Kirk is working with Flintco and they have to destroy something, he might be able to do it with his bare hands, not needing equipment.
Yeah, demolition.
Demolition,
yeah.
That's right. He's been with Flintco for 28 years, almost following graduation. His undergraduate work was construction management, and he took to it in college and has not left it since. Kirk, we're really glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you.
It is great to have you. And we're going to talk about your professional career, but I do want to let you delve back and talk a little bit about, wrestling at Oklahoma State, that's no small thing. Then to become a starter and then to become an All-American, that's a significant accomplishment at a young age. So you must have had some good training going into that your high school and college career. Take us back. When did you start developing some serious expertise in that area?
Well, sure. So I appreciate it. Thank you again for having me on. Yeah. I could talk about wrestling forever, so I want to be careful here. I started in first grade. My father was my coach basically throughout my life and my high school coach. I have an older brother that literally beat the tar out of me every single day in the house, in the wrestling room. And frankly, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but it it allowed me to receive a college education free of charge. And I've come to appreciate that over the years. But so I left home. It was a milestone for me coming to OSU. I'm from Illinois originally, right where the University of Illinois is, Champaign-Urbana. And being 2 states away, you know, you have to kind of figure it out. If it's not going well, are you going to stay, or are you just going to quit and go back? And so came here at 17, knew I was going to be here for 5 years and redshirt my first year. And I had 2 purposes, and that was to join the greatest wrestling program in the country and see what it could do for me. How can I compete in that world, as well as get a college education? And so the friendships that I have created through that experience, whether it be in the construction management department or the wrestling program, have lasted for a lifetime. I mean, I still stay in touch with many of them today, but oddly enough, the greatest accomplishment I can say was I didn't know at the time, but I met my wife about a month into my freshman year. She didn't quite care for me at the time, but it took a while. I just kind of grew on her a little bit. And we just celebrated our 30th anniversary last year. So she definitely runs the show. I don't profess to run the show, but my experiences in wrestling, you know, shaped my life in many ways and my career. But being around people like John Smith, Kenny Mundy, Kendall Cross, just in that room every day, you couldn't help but get better. Mike Sheets. I mean, I got a chance to compete with like folks like Kenny and Mike, and to sit there and wrestle and spar with Olympic gold medalists, national champions, only was going to improve my game or destroy that confidence. One of the 2 things were going to happen. And so I kind of understood growing up the way I did and getting beat so severely by my brother, I learned not to quit. I learned how to every day just get a little closer, just shorten the gap a little bit every day, and that keeps your confidence. And I use those lessons learned today.
Well, with the benefit of hindsight, how does that help?
You know,
today.
Great point. So, you know, the first 20 plus years of my career, I was a project manager. So I was assigned a given project, and I was responsible for the success or failure of that particular project. And you know, when things were not going like you wanted them to, when they were not, you plan it, but it's not going according to plan. Do you just simply give up? Do you persevere and move forward? And trying to get so many personalities outside of our own staff, you know, people that you contract with to deliver certain portions of the work, and getting them all in the same boat together to move forward was something that I could draw upon those experiences and apply. But most recently, about 7 years ago, moving from a project manager to a vice president area manager running the Oklahoma City office, you know, I thought at first, sure. I think what my experience did for me was help me understand and appreciate challenges and adversity. And so I understand there are opportunities to grow. And so in my role, I really didn't know what to expect as a vice president. And I went through some challenging times, especially the first 2 to 3 years. And at times I wondered, am I cut out for that role? And had I not had the experiences I did in wrestling, I probably would have said, you know, it's not for me. Let me do something else.
Let me, before we get too far into Flintco, let me take a step back and talk a little bit more about OSU wrestling. How do you explain what a premier program Oklahoma State University has developed for many, many, many years in wrestling? OU has a good program. They compete sometimes, and sometimes they don't. But over the years, time after time, Oklahoma State is either at the top or within wrestling distance of the top in the country. How do you explain such longevity of excellence?
Sure. I think it's, you know, to me, tradition is important. You know, I had some other opportunities or some other options coming out, and so really didn't know that was going to shape my career and where I was going to go and experience college until I was a junior in high school. But I knew of Oklahoma State and Oklahoma wrestling. My father would get a magazine every month, and I'd just read through that thing, and I knew about the Schultz brothers, and I knew about the, you know, Leroy Smith and Ricky Stewart and those folks. And so I would look forward to reading that every week. And to me, tradition is going to attract talent. Back when I was in school, you know, the people in our wrestling room, I tell people this all the time, we had enough people that were not even on our team that were competing for the world and the Olympic team from Oklahoma State that were in our room sparring with all of our wrestlers. So whatever weight class it was, there's 10 weight classes. And if you thought you were good, just hang out there and switch up with somebody else and see how well it goes. And that was important to drive us to want to do more and not be satisfied with where we were. And there's a lot of things I wish would have happened differently in my career, but I'm very pleased and proud of that career and just being around those athletes. But they changed the rule. So mid-90s, I believe, they stopped allowing that to happen. You can only have one full-time head coach, one full-time assistant, and a restricted earnings coach, and that really hamstrung the ability to sustain that success. So there's other ways to do that through clubs and whatnot, but there's a lot of, much like any other sport, there's a lot of haves and have-nots. So you have private clubs that are all scattered all over the country that they have for wrestling, much like soccer and other things. And if you've got the ability to afford it, you can go become great. And I was a product of a local school program or kids program that had volunteer coaches that would schedule meets and tournaments, and we would go. And so, I have a different mindset of if I think that's a good or bad thing for the sport. But you take people like John Smith, and who was one of the greatest wrestlers in American history, and also a cowboy, and you have him there, and folks in his family that are still involved as assistant coaches. That's how you sustain that success. The name recognition alone is going to draw interest. And then I think they do an excellent job of recruiting in-state, as well as finding the ones that they need to fill gaps with. And this day and age, you have to have a full team to win the national title, and that's all 10 weight classes. That's what we were fortunate enough to do.
You were a true student athlete, but I mean, let's be honest, at the Division I level, that isn't always the case.
Right.
So what advice do you have to someone who's entering a Division I program in any sport about the opportunity to get an education?
Sure. It's a wonderful opportunity, but you have to go into it understanding that the primary focus for you to go to college is to get a degree. It's not so much the case in other major sports, basketball, for example, or football now with the new NIL deals. It's just a stepping stone, but there's not really a professional. Well, there's professional wrestling, but I have my own opinion of that, right? But true amateur wrestling, and then going from there into a world team scenario or an Olympic scenario, yes, there's opportunities. There's opportunities to be head coaches at universities, but if you're not going in with a mindset that I'm going to get a degree, then you're going to be unfortunately disappointed. And I saw a handful during my career at Oklahoma State that were in-state products that were tremendous. I mean, tremendous high school athletes, multiple state champions, came in as true freshmen, set the world on fire, were beating All-Americans, at OSU, and halfway through the year they're gone because they didn't understand the transition that was necessary to be there and to stay eligible as well as to stay healthy, which is another challenge in itself.
We're going to have to take a break. Kirk Mammon is our guest. He's an executive at Flintco, and we'll learn more about what they've done and some of the projects he's worked on, which are very high profile. It's coming up next on The Verdict.
One of the best kept secrets about the post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is that it can be used at a trade school or a technical school, and it doesn't have to be used at a university or college. These are benefits that the veterans have earned through their service, and they should take advantage of it.
Veterans really need to understand that there are many resources offered by the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. They are there to help you find the right school for you, the school that will help you and your family make great steps into your future.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams ranked #2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
And we're back on The Verdict. Kent, where do you want to go from here?
Well, Kirk, tell us a little bit about Flintco itself. Give us a brief overview of Flintco, what it does and how it does it.
Certainly. Well, we were founded in Oklahoma, so very, very proud of that. Been in business for 114 years. Offices that range from Memphis, Tennessee, Northwest Arkansas, Austin and Houston, Texas. Our newest office is in Denver, Colorado, and then of course the office in Oklahoma City, and our headquarters is in Tulsa. We're a commercial general contractor. We range in the market sectors of healthcare, higher education, K through 12, gaming, residential, mixed use, industrial, and federal, our primary market sectors. We do about $1.5 billion annually as all those offices combined. And we also have the ability to do, throughout our offices, to self-perform some of our own work, whether it range from concrete to steel erection to stud framing and drywall.
When the 20th century began, the Skirvin Hotel was a boarded-up building in downtown Oklahoma City. And the mayor at the time, Kirk Humphreys, put together a solutions committee of some city council people and some other people. You know, we can't have a boarded up building in downtown Oklahoma City forever. The economy was starting to improve. And so through a very complicated financing project, that committee, through Kirk's guidance, came up with a way to reopen the Skirvin to all its grandeur. And enter Flintco and Kirk Mammen. And so once the financing was in place, you all get the bid to go in there and work on this project. And boy, what a tough project this was, because this building had been boarded up since the 1980s.
Yes, that's a great point. It was occupied by a few local folks and some pigeons, quite a few pigeons actually. So the job itself, I tell people all the time, it's my most enjoyable experience in construction by far. I'm a huge fan of the history of buildings, the ornateness of buildings, and the art that's just part of it. And it's becoming a lost art. That type of construction you don't see every day in new work, and primarily because the skilled craftsmen that can develop that are gone or retired. And it is a little bit more expensive to do that. But that job, I mean, I remember it specifically, the first 6 months was just exterior, taking the scaffolding and wrapping that entire building in scaffolding so that we can repair the masonry that had been sitting there for years and deteriorating, and the interior demolition. And so once those two components were done, in 12 months' time, the interior build back was completed. And so I was just enjoyed to be part of a project that had that type of history and some of the folks that had stayed there over the years. But just to be able to see and uncover the beauty of what it was originally. It had been covered up by over several decades. You know, almost every decade there for a while, there was a new hotel manager. And perhaps they'd put their own kind of flavor to it. And in my opinion, all the really neat stuff was covered up. And so we got to recreate that and bring it back. And so for me, it was a huge success for a lot of reasons. I think to your point, Mick and the previous mayors, just having that vision and leadership to do something like that. I think a lot of people in a lot of cities would have said, it's not worth the investment to do that. And I'm so glad it was kept and restored.
Well, that was a springboard to many things for Oklahoma City, to have that hotel new, if you will, and fresh and available.
Yeah, it proved the hotel market was alive and well. And, you know, prior to the Skirvin opening, we had one downtown hotel, and now there's more than 20. Right. And so, I mean, the Skirvin really was a catalyst in that regard. I'm just going to grab some projects.
Sure.
I know Flintco, you know, built the ballpark downtown in Oklahoma City, was involved in the convention center, but significantly in the Devon Tower.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
let's talk about that. Talk about a skyline changer.
Yeah, it really did a lot of things for this market that I don't think the market was initially prepared for, but it was approaching $1 billion. I think it was in the 900 million range back, was that 15 years ago? So it was a joint venture between Flintco and another company. And my involvement actually came toward the end after the original building was done, it was occupied. And so back when that was going on, what it did was it really saturated the local trade partner market. Meaning that if there was other work going on, higher education work or a MAPS project or whatever that may be, it was difficult to deliver those projects, and those projects were suffering, you know, in schedule or manpower because of that. And I think it was good for the city and this metro area because we grew from that. Collectively as construction companies and trade partner market, we grew, and now I look ahead at what's on the horizon for 22 and beyond, and in my 28 years here in Oklahoma City, besides the Devon Tower that 1 year, I've never seen this much new construction work to be able to go acquire. And so it's exciting, but yeah, it's a one of a kind. If you've obviously never been in it, no expense were spared in that facility. It's beautiful.
Well, one thing that's always puzzled me, doing a little business law as well as trial work, is how in the world you guys ever figure out what you're going to bid? I mean, you don't know when you take that wall off, what's waiting for you there.
That's right.
What kind of science is involved in creating bids?
Sure, that's a great question. You know, especially if it's an existing facility and you're going to restore it. You know, we've got some tremendous folks in our office that have been doing this for a long time. We've got a gentleman that's been in the pre-construction, our pre-construction department for 40 plus years. And I've never seen anyone that can take minimal information and provide a conceptual estimate that's very accurate, given the circumstances. A lot of times you'll take historical data on similar projects and what we'll do as a company is share that data amongst all of our offices. Now it's going to differ because of different market sectors and cost of living, but you've got a basis for that square foot cost. And so if it's a building, you kind of base it on square foot. If it's, let's say, a parking garage, you base it on parking spaces, and you kind of use those units to measure. And we'll take historical data, we'll factor in the age of that previous project that was similar and provide some escalation or inflation to that annually. And then we'll use our market, our local trade partners, that I believe is what has helped Flintco be successful and vice versa. We value our relationships. We're not a company that's all about just, hey, it's got to be this bottom line regardless. And so I think those relationships with our local trade partners have helped each other be successful because I think they understand how we conduct business. We're going to be firm, but we're going to be fair. We're going to hold everyone accountable, and I think they appreciate that and know what to expect so that we can get their best pricing. But to help answer fully your question, you take those elements, historical data, factor some inflation, look at similar work around our company, and then those trade partners locally, and then that's how you come up with a conceptual estimate. Now, this day and age, it's a whole different challenge because truly the cost escalation challenges and the procurement challenges, because that works with your time and your general conditions of your staff to be there, I've never seen anything like it. It's a challenge that we have never navigated before, but we'll get through it as an industry, and the next challenge will come along.
Well, we got about a minute left. I was hoping you would touch on the supply chain aspect
Absolutely.
And the challenges that creates.
Yes, it's forcing companies, I think, to be more creative, involve and implement technology, and understand what can we do and build off-site. While this is going up, while this structure is being erected, what can be done on the finishes side or the infrastructure side, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, that can be fabricated over here in a controlled environment that's safer and cheaper to build. And it's being done while this is being erected so that your time is condensed that way and you can become more certain with your time. We know that you can get material. It's just material that we used to get in, let's say, 2 months, now it takes 8 months. Mm-hmm. So if we know that going in, then we can plan accordingly to make sure that 8-month time frame is still met and it slips in the schedule where you need it.
30 seconds left. Technology, how's that impacted since you entered the business?
Oh, it's hard to say. It's totally different. I look at an Atari and the gaming systems we have now, right? I grew up with an Atari. So I'm an old school guy. People give me a hard time. I didn't have gray hair, but it is a tremendous tool that we use more and more every day. 3-dimensional modeling, laser scanning, drone imagery, which I want to say just in closing, is a very viable industry and career field for the young people coming up. We need more skilled craftsmen, salaried individuals working in management or in the field. But we also need those skilled craftsmen that are the carpenters, the laborers, the masons, and it's a viable career that can offer a lot for a young individual.
Kirk Mammen of Flintco, today's guest on the verdict. Kirk, thanks so much for coming in.
You bet.
And Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk.
It used to be okay in hospitals. It used to be okay in movie theaters. It was okay in classrooms, restaurants, and airplanes. But thanks to a greater understanding of the dangers, that's not okay anymore. So now that we know secondhand smoke causes lifelong health problems, Why is it still okay to smoke with children in the car? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's get serious about protecting kids. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
You have children coming from a different lifestyle, different mindset. You have to open your arms and really do what you have to do to have that child become a part of your family. And if it's more patience, that's what you do. Kids gotta know they can trust you. And that's what we try to do with these kids.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Enjoyed having Kirk Mammon on the show. I've had the good fortune to do some work with Kirk and Flintco, and they do have a stellar reputation.
Well, they really do, and you don't buy that. You earn it by building good things and being good partners in the building process that the owners appreciate.
We've got some website information. We'll start with how you can get a hold of Kirk and his cohorts out at Flintco. That website is flintco.com. That's flintco.com. And then we have a website, theverdict.tv. You can log on and talk about a subject you'd like to see us explore a little more thoroughly, or a guest you'd like to see here on the show. Kent and I'll have another show next week, and we'll see you then.